Hello everybody, Bernie Wall here. If you haven't met me before, I'm an IELTS trainer, teacher, former IELTS examiner, and I've been working with IELTS students to get high bands in IELTS for over 25 years, often working with students who've taken the exam maybe 2-3 times, up to many times, and not got their score. So that's really my area of specialism. And today I want to talk about writing, and I want to give you 3 elements that you should have in your IELTS Task 2 paragraph. Now, I use 3 a lot. I think 3 things are easy to remember, so it's quite a good way of distilling the information and creating a fairly simple process. Now, a lot of people are a little scared of writing. I think mostly because they don't always know what to write, and then a lot of students are not quite sure how to write. And so this can make the process a little bit overwhelming. So if we can get it into a much simpler process, then I think that will help. So I'm only looking at a paragraph and the paragraph level. And there are 3 things that you must have in each paragraph. Firstly, you must have 1 or 2 good ideas. Secondly, you must have good, strong evidence to support your ideas. And that means you need to convince the reader or the examiner of what you're saying. And then thirdly, you want either an example to illustrate the idea or extra information or evidence that will further strengthen your idea. So let's look at the ideas first and how you go about that. So the first thing you need to do is look at the question, analyze it carefully, and then brainstorm a few ideas that you can write about that will answer that question. And then when you've thought about those ideas, pick 2 or 3 that you can support well, because it's really important that you convince the reader of your point of view or of your ideas. But be very careful that these ideas fit with the question. That's absolutely vital. Otherwise, you'll lose marks on your task response. Then let's go to evidence. So when you put forward an idea, you have to say why you believe that, or why you think that, or why you think that is a good idea for this question. And that's your convincing. The examiner needs, even if they don't agree with your idea, which they might not, they can still be convinced that it is a good idea and has merit if you give good evidence and support. So that's really important. And the final thing is an example. Now, you don't have to give an example. And you'll see essays quite often that have quite high scores, and they don't give overt examples. They will give information which gives an illustration. So there are examples, but they're not always written like, for example, or for instance. They might be embedded in a more sophisticated way. So when you do write an example, make it quite general. It has to be illustrative of your point, and it has to support your point. But what you don't want is an example that becomes a story. And another thing you don't want is an example that takes over from the points you're making. I've seen student essays where the example was 2/3 of the paragraph. You don't want that. It needs to be short, snappy, and supportive of your idea. So what I want to do is share my screen and show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so I hope you can see that clearly. So this is a question about spending money on looking for oil and instead of using the money on renewables. So it's quite a common topic about renewable energy. So should money be still spent on searching for oil, or would it be better to spend that money on looking for new sources of power, namely renewables? And you have to say, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So this is an academic task too. If it were a general training, it would probably say, do you agree or disagree? So you could have the same question. So here are the elements, the three elements: ideas, evidence, example. So the first idea is natural sources of power generation are already known and being utilized. A second idea is they should be developed further and improved. Now, there are two ideas there that I'm going to use in this paragraph. Here's some evidence. Renewable sources like solar, wind, and wave power are cheap, which is why they're being used, I guess. And they are better for the environment. And they are good alternatives to oil. So there are three pieces of evidence to support those two ideas. Here's a sub-idea. Now, when I say sub-idea, I'm thinking of things like moreover, furthermore. They are available to everyone wherever they live in the world. So there's a sub-idea. And evidence for that is that they are already being used in many different countries across the world. So there's the evidence for my secondary idea. And then finally, here's an example. Iceland produces almost 100% of its energy from renewable sources. Now, that was just something I came across when I was reading an article, and I remembered it. And if there is an example that you remember like this, you can use it. If you don't know a specific example, then you can say that many countries are now moving towards renewable sources. That's a very general example that would also have the same effect. And then finally, I've got a summarizing sentence, which I could put at the end of the paragraph, which restates the main idea. So governments across the world must prioritize support and funding for the development of the renewable energy industry. Okay, now that looks like quite a lot, but remember, we have to have complex sentences, we have to have linking words, and we have to make this whole thing cohesive. So if I do all of that, then this is how my paragraph looks. And it's only 114 words, which is about the right length for a task 2. In the first place, natural sources of power generation are already known and being utilized. So for that reason, should be further developed and improved. So that's my first two ideas. I've combined them. Furthermore, renewable energies such as solar, wind, and wave power are not only cheap to exploit, but also better for our environment, making them good alternatives to oil. So here I've actually got a complex sentence for my evidence. So the two ideas are combined. The first bits of evidence are also combined. In addition, they are available to everyone wherever they live in the world. So there's a little bit more to the idea that anybody can use this. You don't have to have a lot of money, especially, and all of the resources like wind and solar are available all over. These energy sources are currently being used in many countries. So there's my other idea, my other evidence, sorry, for the sub-idea. And my example, Iceland, for example, produces almost 100% of its energy from renewable sources. So here is a complex sentence, plus it's also my example. And then I've done a summarizing statement to finish off the paragraph. It's therefore imperative that governments across the globe prioritize support and funding for the development of the renewable energy industry. Okay, so then I would probably go on further to discuss other aspects of this. Now, I don't have the introduction here, so I can't tell you which direction that would go in, but as a single standalone paragraph, it's got all those elements: ideas, evidence, example, and then it's all of those things are joined together with good linking words and good cohesion. Okay, so I hope that's given you an idea of how just those three elements, if you bear them in mind and practice putting these things together, you'll be able to come up with a perfectly good paragraph for your IELTS Task 2 again and again and again. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. And remember, if you want to connect with me, go to my website, sign up to my, my emails, or join my Facebook group where we do a lot more of this in terms of Facebook Lives and posts. And I hope to see you on the next video. Bye, everybody.